Hey everyone, this is Dr. Brendan Kelly with Rise Chiropractic. Today, I would like to share a case that I was given permission to share by this individual, a patient of ours, who's been seeing us for about a year. His caretaker also asked that we share the changes that we've seen with this particular individual. I'm going to call him G, um, just to protect his privacy, but he is in his 60s and he's got some changes in his spine that you'll see on an X-ray that we thought were permanent when we started with him, but we were actually able to see some pretty cool changes. So first, before we get into the x-ray, I'd like to explain the case a little bit to you guys and show you the neurological assessment that we did on G. So when G started, we took a history. We found out that when he was a baby or a young child, he had a really high fever, and that resulted in some developmental delays that he ended up having throughout his childhood, which still are affecting him into his adulthood. So G does have a family member who takes care of him, but he's kind of seen his fair share of accidents over the years. He's had a couple slips and falls that were pretty traumatic. He's also been thrown from a motorcycle multiple times, and so the x-rays definitely show that wear and tear, but we were still able to help him. And the reason we want to talk about this case is because sometimes people don't think that chiropractic can help, or it's too far gone. And this is just a perfect example that there's no such thing as too far gone. We may not be able to give you a brand new body again, but we can absolutely help you function better. So at the top here, these 3 scans along the top, what you're seeing is we started him on the left, and then we had a reassessment in the middle. So we started in March of 2019, we reassessed in June of 2019, and then we did a final eval on January of 2020. So about a 10-month plan there. What we're looking at the top here is how much stress is on his nervous system. So the nervous system is designed to control and coordinate every function in your body so that you can remain healthy and adapt to your environment. This is what's responsible for healing your cuts and digesting your food and helping you sleep and use the bathroom and all that stuff without you having to think about it. It'd be pretty exhausting if we had to consciously control that stuff. Your autonomic nervous system does that work for you. And so this rolling thermal that we take is an infrared heat assessment, and it looks at how much heat is coming off of the skin along the spine from top to bottom, from left to right, and we're looking for abnormal heat distribution. And so when you see colors, green, blue, red, that's mild, moderate, severe levels of abnormal heat or nerve interference or nerve irritation, whatever you want to call that. So we want to see white bars well distributed on both sides of the spine. So we don't want to see it chunked on one side, and we don't want to see a bunch of colors, is essentially how we read this. At the bottom, we read it the same, but it's an entirely different test. This is called EMG. And EMG is a way to test how much activity is in the muscles around the spine, in the postural system. So how efficiently is G using the energy in his postural muscle system? If it takes 90% of your energy to lift and carry this bag, in this example, that's going to wear on you a lot more than if it only takes you 20% of your energy to lift and carry this bag. So we want the muscles working efficiently so they're not wasting a bunch of energy to be able to accomplish the same task. So if we see a bunch of red, green, blue, or even yellow, meaning underactive, that means we know that there's too much or too little activity in that region, and we need to make that more efficient. So in this initial scan, you'll see there is some stress. The second scan actually appears worse. G's in his 60s. He's had these issues for a long time, so it almost took getting a little bit worse before it got better. Of course, his symptoms were getting better throughout care here, but the subjective assessment of how he felt didn't necessarily match the objective assessment of how he was functioning at that first reassessment. So it definitely took him re-educating and learning how to move and fixing those problems in his spine and in his pelvis to get him functioning to where he is now, which at this most recent reassessment, we can see that not only have the scores improved, but there's much less stress on that nervous system and a better distribution of activity in the postural muscle system. And you might say, well, there's still a lot of severe activity at the top on the right here. When you see his x-rays, you'll understand why, but being able to improve that score has done a lot for G. And so now I'm going to show you what the actual physical body looks like, not just the functional assessment. And that's what we're looking at in this image here. So this is a side view of G's spine. There's a couple things I'd like to comment on before I show you the follow-up x-ray, but just right away what we're seeing is how much degeneration and change there is in his neck right here if you're following my mouse. So a good way to look at the spine is to look at these curves. So you see green, you see purple, you see blue. That should be like an S shape, so forwards in the low back, backwards in the middle, and then forwards again in the neck, and the ears should be directly over the shoulders, should be directly over the hips, over the knees, over the ankles. So that gravity line that I drew, everything from the hips here to the shoulder to the ears, they should line up on that directly, and there shouldn't be too much or too little curve throughout the spine. We should see normal curves about 30 to 40 degrees in each of those, just to keep it simple, in each of those regions of the spine. So if you look at the shape of the neck, you'd probably say, well, gosh, there's not a lot of space between his shoulders and his head. He's really crunched over. And you'd be correct. When I started with him, I thought that all of these segments were fused together naturally. His body did this over time because of the wear and tear to those discs and those joints. In fact, when we took the front x-ray, we couldn't even see the structures at the top of the spine that we wanted to see because he couldn't tilt his head back enough to be able to visualize that structure. His head is very much forward on the shoulders, and the neck is compromised. The reason this is important is because your brainstem and your spinal cord are going to have to traverse through that canal in the neck, through that spinal canal in the neck. And the more you lose that curve there, the more stress and tension it puts on that spinal cord, and it makes it very difficult for the brain to send signals down to all the cells, tissues, organs, and muscles in the body so that those things can function properly. So we start to see aches and pains, but also dysfunction in the organs. The last thing I'll comment on the pre-x-ray here is how far forward his low back curve is right here, 63 millimeters, compared to the top of his spine, which is where I drew this gravity line. So right at the top of where the neck is, I want that to line up with the bottom of the spine as well. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the post x-ray, and I'm going to go back and forth a couple times so you guys can see the difference. I want you to pay attention to the length of his neck and how he's holding his head and anything else that you might see throughout the spine. So here's pre, and there is post. Pre, post. And if you look at the neck, you can see that he's starting to get much better spacing through those bones in his neck. We weren't able to totally reverse the curve, but the fact that we were able to get his head away from his shoulders and his head over his shoulders, over his hips better, you'll see that that gravity line starting at the top of his neck at the C2 drops down and almost crosses perfectly in front of the low back. That's a much, much, much better postural change. And as a result of that, you can see the green line going into the purple, and then even coming into the blue is a much more continuous, normal curvature through the low back and the mid back. So I'll flip back so you can see that one more time. Very far forward here, very far back there, and then he hunches forward at the top. And now he's got better spacing through the discs in his neck, which I didn't even think he still had at that first view. And he's keeping his head further back over his shoulders and showing better posture overall. So as a result of this major change in his spine, we were able to see those major functional improvements as well that you saw on the scans. If you guys have any questions about either a family member that this may have sparked a thought about, if we can help them, or maybe it's you're wondering if we can help you with gentle and specific conservative chiropractic care, please give us a call at Rise Chiropractic, and we would love to talk you through that with a complimentary consult. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope to see you soon.